Hello, here's another episode of Supercharged Science with Mr. Cox. Today we're going to look at a model of the solar system. This is a model of the solar system pretty much in a flat plane. Some of the newer models indicate that it may actually be more helical, since the sun is moving around through our galaxy, the Milky Way, and the whole Milky Way is turning, and the planets are chasing the sun because of its gravitational pull. You get more of a interweaving back and forth helical type of movement, but just looking at in the flat plane. Let's move about here a little bit. I want you to notice the four inner planets. This model is older, so it actually includes Pluto. On the four inner planets, here we're talking about Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Now, of course, they're not really that close to each other, but they have to be able to make it concise and push it down, or compact is a better word, into a model that you can look at. So notice Mercury is the closest, and it seems that the sun is, if there was ever an atmosphere there, it's so close that the sun has blown it off. It's a rocky planet, extremely hot, but Venus is actually hotter, even though it's the second farthest out. This would be because it has a thick atmosphere containing carbon dioxide and also has acid dripping from the sky. So it's not a place that we're going to live on, that we're going to colonize, unless, as some cosmologists have said and explorers, maybe we could put kind of like balloon cities floating above the planet, way up high in the top part of the atmosphere where the acid's not dripping. But it's very hot there. It's at least 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, we usually use Celsius in science, but just pointing that out. Notice the next planet, of course, would be Earth, or Earth, as some people say. The Earth is in what's called the habitable zone, or the Goldilocks zone, just like Goldilocks with the three bears. Some things were too hot, some were too cold, some were just right. Some things were too, beds were too hard, some were too soft, others just right. The Earth is in exactly the right spot, the right distance from the sun, and our sun is a yellow dwarf, and it's the type of star that it's very stable compared to other stars, and it's not like just deciding to every so many days or every so many years just obliterate all life from any planet around it. There's obviously radiation coming off of it, but our electromagnetic field protects us from the bulk of it, from most of it. Mars is the next closest, but here you're still talking about millions of miles from Earth. Notice that we get something called retrograde motion, where it looks like these planets, if you watch them from day to day, night to night, mainly night to night, it seems like they'll go forward in the sky and one will seem to pass the other one. This is because as they're moving in the sky, some of them have faster orbits that are farther away, some of them have slower orbits, and so it looks like they're passing each other, just like if you have two cars on the interstate, on the highway, one passes the other, it makes the other one appear to fall back when it's really not falling back. Of course, you realize there's not little black painted metal wires holding the planets in space. The next one out would be Jupiter. That's the big green one back there. Between Jupiter and Mars, there's something that this model doesn't show. It would be very difficult to show in a model, and it's called an asteroid belt. There's been all kinds of theories. Some people think it's made out of planets that just never formed. There's some older theories that think that there was a planet X, that there was some kind of catastrophic event that caused it to blow into pieces. Of course, we don't really know for sure. Most of the cosmologists now lean towards it being a planet that never formed. Some of the older ones would still be looking at Planet X, so it's just something of interest to think about. notice where Jupiter's at, and there's Saturn on beyond it. Jupiter does have rings, but they're not as large and obvious as Saturn. Jupiter, now there's some debate about this now as well too, but we've known for a long time that Jupiter, because of its large mass, it was almost massive enough to become a star, but not quite. So it does put off a little bit of its own light. It's a gas giant, but not enough to give us the light we need. However, if you turn a radio channel, especially if you have one that's not digital, and you're adjusting it between the stations, or you find like a really old television that doesn't have just digital, and you're adjusting it between the stations, or you get on a station that's not clear, you'll get this static and the lines going across there. Most of that, some of it comes from different things. Some of it's something called the cosmic background radiation that we could talk about another time. But a big percentage of that is actually the electromagnetic field coming off of Jupiter and the radio waves coming off of it that we can hear. But it seems that Jupiter pulls a lot of asteroids towards it, and often they crash into it. Those that don't crash into it will get whipped out away from the Earth, again putting us in the Goldilocks zone or habitable zone, because Jupiter, and probably the other gas giants to some effect, but especially Jupiter, will pull those large objects out towards it. The next gas giant would be Saturn back there. All of these, by the way, these gas giants have moons. Some of them have multiple moons. You get out here a little farther, you see Neptune and Uranus. Uranus and Neptune, I should put it backwards. Then there's Pluto out there. Pluto's a small rocky, it's now considered a dwarf planet. It was originally called a planet. So, there is I would call it a conspiracy theory, maybe even a fable, that there's something called Planet Nibiru that's out there, and you'll find things online. They'll say, well, Planet Nibiru, NASA knows it's coming, and it's coming in, and the sun's hiding it, and we can't see it. It's almost here, and when it gets here, it has these awful, evil aliens on it that's going to destroy us all, or that the gravity off of it cause massive tidal waves and destroy us all. We have no science for that. That all comes from some kind of misinterpretations or people running with things from some very ancient Sumerian text, and they didn't really have the science to tell us these things, and they put a name to it, and they call it Nibiru. And there is probably, by the way, another planet out there when you look at the mathematics and the physics of the things, because of the gravity and the mass of all the objects. But scientists have no reason to believe it's Nibiru, or that has alien life on it that's coming to get us. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you're probably not going to find life, or you're not as likely to find life on these outer planets, because they're so far away from the sun that they're very cold. And the gas giants, of course, have a lot of gases on them, some of which could be poisonous, some are not, but a lot of poisonous gases. And the gravity is also very high on them, so it would be difficult for life to live there. Life as we know it anyway. So you'll be looking more for life in the inner planets in the habitable zone. Earth. You might suspect that Venus would, if it wasn't for it's so ridiculously hot, has the carbon dioxide thick atmosphere and poisonous acids dripping from it. Then Mars, that's probably our most interesting planet for life, but it doesn't have much of an electromagnetic field left at all, just little pockets of electromagnetic field. So it doesn't have much protection at all from the energy coming in from the sun, and even really from the galaxy and deep space. The sun puts off the most destructive energy to it. It doesn't have a very thick atmosphere. It does have an atmosphere, very small traces of oxygen. We're finding some water and some frozen water there. But again, right now we haven't really found evidence of life or past life, and that's what they're searching for. But most scientists that I know of believe that if any life would exist there, it would have been from the past, or if it would be there now, it would probably have to be like in underground caves or buried deep within the Martian soil because the radiation is so ridiculously strong there. And the elements, the heat, the cold, and there's nasty sandstorms. I say heat, it's mostly cold, but the electromagnetic radiation coming off of it. The planet is very cold. So I want to wrap it up there on the planets, and we'll talk to you on another video about the Earth and Moon system.